Thank you for staying tuned. And just before we delve right into our discussion on bridging the housing gap, we'll bring you some reports. Let's know what's happening across. Housing deficit and its effect on the masses is a challenge that should be tackled, especially now that Nigeria's housing deficit is estimated at 28 million. In this report, Francis Udojo takes a look at the major policy interventions of the present administration towards tackling the challenges of housing deficit in Nigeria.
One of the major policy decisions taken by the present administration in Nigeria to tackle housing deficit was the separation of the Ministry of Housing from that of Works and the appointment of professionals as ministers in persons of architect Ahmed Musa Dangiwa and engineer Abdullahi Tijani Gwarazo to man the ministries. Apart from the thought of providing shelter, boosting the economy of the nation and creating jobs for over 100,000 teeming youths were part of the plans of President Bola Tinubu as it moved to build 100,000 houses across the nation. The presidential target for the Ministry of Housing is to build at least 20,000 housing units per year, but the ministry has decided to push it further with plans to deliver 50,000 houses in the first phase of the Renewed Hope cities and estates. This has since commenced with the inauguration of the 3,112 units of Renewed Hope cities and the inauguration of housing estates in 6 geopolitical zones and the FCT. So far, over 6,000 houses have been erected in 13 locations in less than a year since its groundbreaking in February this year.
The plan, as the Honorable Minister says all the time, is to make sure that all those locations where we have broken ground for, the housing projects are to be completed within 3 months. So his plan is to ensure that the houses are completed, the houses are sold to Nigerians to take possession before the year ends.
The ministry, in collaboration with financial and other institutions like the FMBN and other private developers, are providing funding for the projects through budget allocation and loans for developers and off-takers.
From budgetary allocation, and then we leverage public-private partnerships, where we have this partnership with developers who have the capacity to raise financing, who have the capacity to even get their own land, while the government, all it does is just to create an enabling environment and possibly through the intervention of the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, provide bankable off-taker guarantee.
You would recall that in February this year, Mr. President did the groundbreaking of 3,112 housing units in Karsana to kickstart this project. Now, the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria provided a 100 billion naira off-taker guarantee to make this happen. This guarantee was provided to the consortium of developers so that they can raise funding for this project. One of the initiatives that we're also doing with the ministry is what we call the Ministerial Pilot Housing Scheme, where the ministry provides land and the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria provides funding to developers who build houses under the scheme. The interesting thing in all of these initiatives is that at the end of the day, when houses are delivered, the main purpose is that these houses will be off-taken by contributors, by Nigerians. So what we do as Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria is any contributor to the bank, once you contribute for 6 months to this scheme, you become qualified to access mortgage finance to acquire a house of your own.
Housing is probably one of the main agendas that the bank support countries. And the discussion with the ministry about that is ongoing. The housing gap is caused by many things. One of them is basically the financial part, but another thing is actually the ability of the market to produce enough housing stocks. And one aspect actually is related to land.
For easy delivery, the Ministry of Housing inaugurated 4 reforms task teams of experts, which include multi-agency and land reforms task teams that will help deploy expertise in the delivery of affordable houses to all strata of Nigerians.
We know the problem. We know that inefficient land administration is affecting all that we are doing, is crippling the economy. And until we are able to manage our land policies So many of the people that we call poor people have land assets, but they have no title. They need those titles to be able to borrow money, to leverage on them as collateral, to borrow money and start up their businesses.
With a projection of providing 550,000 housing units per annum for over a span of 10 years, the Minister of Housing said Nigeria will need 5.5 trillion per annum. He believes with the support of stakeholders, especially the lawmakers, the country will be able to reduce the surging housing deficit significantly. Francis Udojo, NTA News.